Hello and welcome to the ADHD Artist Podcast, where we explore and celebrate the lives of artists with ADHD. Listen to interviews with all different types of artists with ADHD, where we talk about life, art, superpowers, and... Wait, what was I saying? Hosted by Sarah Guys, your fellow ADHD artist. Thanks for joining. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 13 of the ADHD Artist Podcast. I am so excited because I love April and May. Those are my favorite months, possibly because my birthday is in May, but also I just really love spring. And at least the other Chicago people here are noticing that the weather is getting a lot better. The sun is coming up, and oh, it is so nice. So I hope that, especially if you live in a cold weather climate that is starting to warm up, that you spend some time outside. So I had mentioned in one of my last episodes that I am going to start having sponsored ads on the podcast, and we're going to start today. And most of you all will recognize the company that I'm promoting because I happened to interview the founder last episode. So if you are a visual artist looking for inspiration, Paper Demon is a free online role-playing game designed to help artists get motivated to create. Draw your original character visiting their fantastical worlds and be rewarded with ability points, XP, and loot. Learn more at www.paperdemon.com/ADHDartistpod. Again, that's www.paperdemon.com/ADHDartistpod. So I am very excited to talk about my guest that we have on today. Her name is Kelli Butler, but many of her fans will know her as the Opera Geek. So, a little about Kelli. Kelli Butler, known online as the Opera Geek, is a professional opera singer, aria-slinging mercenary, and actual bard. She is an award-winning opera soprano whose roles include Queen of the Night, Hanna Glavari, Musetta, Violetta, and more. When not performing, say during a pandemic, she can be found playing games on her Twitch channel or appearing in a multitude of other TTRPG/D&D shows, including the new campaign, Let's Get Wildmount, set in the Critical Role universe. Kelli is the co-author of the best-selling College of the Opera Bard subclass for bards, which can be found on the DM's Guild. She lives in New York with her husband Justin and their two very irrational pets, Bones and Scotty. And before we get started with the interview, I just wanted to do something kind of special today. Kelli has given me permission to play one of the clips that she has of her actually singing, because when I listened, I was absolutely floored. And I think that her singing is a huge part of who she is, so let's play this little clip for you. Sometimes I just have to pinch myself that I get to interview people like this that are so talented and talk to them about mental health struggles. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. And here is my interview with Kelli. I am here with Kelli Butler, a.k.a. the Opera Geek.
That's me.
You follow her on social media. Kelli, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. I'm always open to talking about mental health and ADHD because for way too long, people told us to shove it on down and not talk about it. So I'm done with it.
Me too. And that is why we're here. And
yep.
It's so funny for the people listening. We just discovered that we went to the same high school.
Different years.
Different years in Texas, and how incredibly random and fun and strange. So anyways, we've been gossiping a little, but we are ready. We are ready to be professional. So Kelli, so I like to start out and just ask, have you had any very noticeable ADHD moments in the past day or two that you can share?
I mean, the better question would probably be, have I not had any? I can literally have in front of me, this is the list of things you have to do today. You must go down this list. And so I'll start with, like, say, updating a spreadsheet for work. And then about 3 hours later, I discovered that I'm halfway through like the 17th season of Dr. Pol on National Geographic. I'm like, wait, what time is it again? Oh, crap.
Whoops.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So yeah, I have a lot. My husband often will call my attention to it. He's one of the few that I let kind of poke fun at me about it, because he'll kind of like snap his fingers and be like, hello, back this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's quite often. I mean, just today I messed up my dog's appointment time because I wasn't paying attention to what date it was on the app. So
Oh no.
yeah. So for me, it's more like it doesn't have moments. I know a lot of people have definable moments. For me, it's really all the time.
Yeah.
And more definable moments to me are when I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Like I often describe to people who don't know, who are neurotypical and maybe don't know what it's like inside an ADHD brain, or maybe they've bought into that whole like joke, oh, haha, I just had an ADHD. You didn't have an ADHD moment. It's an actual diagnosis. It's a thing.
Right.
You know,
You're not just a little ADHD today. You're like,
no, it's like the people with the OCD, like, oh, I'm so OCD. No, you're not.
yeah.
So I often explain it to people that aren't quite understanding why it's so hard for me to focus, by telling them my brain is like the wall of TVs at a Best Buy, like 50 TVs. They are all on different channels at the same time. One of them is consistently telling me that I am worthless. Other ones are telling me other things about myself. I don't know where I put the remote. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine how it's like in someone's brain who doesn't have 20 thoughts going at the same time.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. I mean, even just the image that you're describing to me of these TVs on a wall is like, I start having this feeling of dread. It's like constantly being pulled in different directions. No wonder we can't remember what we're talking about. It's because, we've got so many different paths. Which one did we pick this time?
Exactly. It's really difficult. And I think that's what results a lot of times in us being so frustrated when we can't get something right the first time we do it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, we see point A, and then we see point Z. We forget all the letters in between and we just say, no, if I start here, I should immediately end there. That's how this works, right?
Right.
You know? So like when I say I can't find the remote, that's kind of like me saying I can't find the single switch that will fix me. Because there isn't a single switch. And the truth is, we don't need to be fixed. You know, and I spent 24 years untreated, diagnosed, but purposefully refusing treatment because I was so sure I should do it on my own.
Interesting. Well, that is a perfect segue into me asking you, when were you diagnosed?
So this was way back in the old days. I was diagnosed when I was 7.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, about 10 feet away from me, I have a drawer that contains my actual child psych evals because my mother still had them. Yeah, so I have my original psych evals. She sent them to me last year when I finally decided to start seeking therapy and help. And it was so sad as an adult to go back and read what all the adults thought about little me. You know, when I was diagnosed, my parents, I told you before we started, had to really fight My dad is in the military, so he's often deployed, but when he was home, he was right beside my mom fighting tooth and nail for both of us kids, but especially for me because it was obvious that something was different.
Mm.
Back at that point, they didn't even call it ADHD. They called it ADD.
Yep.
And they added the H in later, but they thought at that point that that hyperactivity only applied to physical hyperactivity, which of course isn't the case. But the kicker is, one of the reasons they had to fight is because back then it was thought and they were told that girls cannot have ADHD. So, I have so many evaluations in that folder from teachers, and some of the teachers really wanted to help, and some of the teachers really thought I should learn to conform, and they try to break the spirit that you've got so that you just behave like other people because it's easier.
Yeah.
It's different.
And so, I was diagnosed when I was around 7 or 8. And there was this pressure to just kind of be, was basically what I understood from what the doctors told me is that kind of, I'm broken, I need to be fixed. Here's a pill, you take it at lunch, and then you'll be fixed, and then you won't get bad grades anymore. And so I was just like, okay, whatever, I'll take it. I'll fix myself. And like, the anxiety that is still attached to that feeling that I still have today.
Yeah.
Of just like, don't worry, I'll fix myself. I know it's all my fault. If I can just be better, then the world would be better, right?
Yeah. That doesn't ever really go away, does it?
No, it really doesn't. You just kind of start to understand it in different ways, kind of reframe it, and surround yourself with other people who can say, hey, I've had that experience too. And then we don't feel so alone.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that they ran up against, because my mother noticed, when I was in like first grade, she was starting to notice that something was different, and she was getting these reports from school. Kelly's finishing all her work, and then she just can't sit still. And then she's looking around the room, and she's doing all this stuff, and I don't appreciate it. So my mom asked for more work for me. No. My mom asked for harder work for me. No. Then my parents asked for me to be skipped grades. To that, everybody was in agreement. The school psychologist, counselor, I think they were just counselors at that time. They didn't actually have school psychologists per se. The principal, everything, they were like, okay, let's push her forward, see if we can just handle that by giving her more challenge. And it didn't happen because my first grade teacher, I've told this story on Twitter before and people lose it, told the panel and my parents that they couldn't give in to me because then I would grow up to be like Al Capone.
What?
I would like my first grade teacher to know that I have paid my taxes faithfully every year. But no, she did. She was from the old school, which was you make the child do what you say. So, I ended up, exactly. I ended up continuing, on basic, and we ended up moving to Germany for my dad's restation. And my mom and dad started the fight again. And this time they had teachers who supported it. At that point was when we ran up against girls can't have ADHD or ADD. And also, but she gets such good grades, she can't have it. For them, ADD meant boys that were too hyperactive and hurt other people and didn't do their schoolwork. Like, to them, that's what it was.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's so much easier to diagnose because, the way that it typically, this isn't for all of them, but typically the way it manifests in young boys is, they run around, they hit people, that sort of thing. A lot of times in girls, it's more of an inattentive type of thing where it's kind of the spacing out rather than running around and being crazy and what you think of. And
The
so,
spacing
yeah,
out and then the hyperfocus. Spacing out,
exactly.
hyperfocus.
Yep.
It actually happened to me the other day on stream.
Hmm.
Like there's actual GIFs of me in full hyperfocus mode. And you can tell another ADHD person would be able to look at that and say, I know what she's thinking. But I was having a terrible time streaming this game the other day, and I wouldn't stop restarting and trying to beat it. I wouldn't stop trying to beat the mechanic. And finally, my chat said, why don't you switch games? I was like, I can't. This one's not done. Because you get very focused on, this is what I'm supposed to do, and this is the image that I want people to have, which is that I am good at this thing. And it becomes a detriment sometimes, really.
Well, I'm curious too, you talk about streaming and these games. I know that's such a huge part of your life now. Can you tell me a little bit about the games and what you do with the streaming and the Opera Geek and how that all came about?
Oh, it's such a weird story. So I'm sure both you and the people that are listening to this podcast, whether they are people with ADHD, whether they are partners or loved ones of those with ADHD, will completely understand what I'm about to talk about, which is that you learn to craft personalities. You learn to build walls. And that's what I did in school. I built walls because if you built the wall up, people couldn't hurt you. And if you were the first one to make fun of yourself or laugh, it wasn't them.
Yeah.
And it took me, and it was a detriment to some of my performing skills, because while I could very quickly get into character in a full performance, that's not how auditions work.
Yeah.
So I was consistently getting the note that, we don't see any emotional attachment, whereas I'm feeling the emotional attachment, but I've trained myself to not show it, because I had this image of what I was supposed to be. And my first opera manager, which, bless him, amazingly accomplished man, he wanted me to cultivate this diva personality, this image of a diva. You can't talk about all this nerd stuff, Kelly. It's
oh, no.
It's weird. And he was coming from an era of opera performance where that was the thing. He was coming from an era of opera performance where you were selling this lofty, ethereal image of the artist.
Oh,
but
interesting.
Yeah, and then the internet came along. With the advent of the internet and social media, people can't stay lofty artists that are, so untouchable for long.
Yeah.
And eventually, unfortunately, he passed away. So when I got my next management, in the interview, I said, I'm so sorry. I hope it's not going to upset you if I, slip up somewhere and say something about geeky things. And she said, wait, what? And so I started telling her, I love these video games. I'm obsessive over science fiction and fantasy and video gaming and all of this. And she was like, oh, no. You let all that shit out. She's like, you let that fly. And so I started to stop curating my image to a point, because you still don't want people to be able to see you and hurt you.
Yeah.
But I started curating my image, or like stopping to have that, image that I thought people wanted. And I have to say, as a sidebar, that while my parents supported me so much, and I wouldn't have been able to accomplish half of what I did without them, my husband and my best friend, who is a child psychologist, I wouldn't have been able to learn to build a moat and a drawbridge across it through that wall without them. And I think it's very important to acknowledge that there are people that can see us for the hot messes that we are
Yeah.
and still love us.
Yeah. I feel like I've talked to a lot of people that it's just like, well, we're so frustrated with ourselves, you know? It's like, well, I can't like me, then how is someone else gonna like me?
Like one of the things I say all the time, and I said it to a friend of mine the other night, was, hooray, today I have had worth. And they kind of didn't understand. They said, no, I mean, what are you talking about? You always have worth. And anybody that follows me on social media will know that I adore the author Terry Pratchett and his series
Oh.
Discworld. Like, it's gotten me through a lot of very hard times. And so I quoted back to her. He wrote a book called Unseen Academicals, which has some of the most accurate descriptions of mental health struggles that I've ever read. And one of them that really resonated was the main character saying, do I have worth? And the other person saying, well, what do you mean? Of course, look at what you've just made. You made this thing, so you have worth. And the character replies, yes, but I'm learning that worth is something that must be constantly accumulated. And that one hit like a ton of bricks. I told you before we started that, I had gone for 24 years untreated.
Yeah.
I took myself off medication when I was 13 because I was so ashamed that I couldn't do it on my own.
Interesting. Okay, tell me more.
Yeah. I cultivated this image of being the person who could do anything because the only worth I found in myself was in my intelligence or in things I knew or things I could do. And so I said, I don't need this. I have to do it by myself. And my parents said, okay, we're going to let you do this because it's your choice, which, yay for parents teaching bodily autonomy at a young age.
Yeah.
It's your choice, but we're still your parents and we're going to watch you.
Yeah.
And if things get bad, or if your grades suddenly take a nosedive or something, we're going to revisit this topic.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I maintained straight A's through, except in math. We're not going to talk about math.
Yeah, we don't have to.
I don't like math.
Why
I don't
would we
like
talk
math.
about, it's like we don't need to even talk about it.
I don't like it, so I didn't do well in it.
Yes,
because
same.
Yeah.
Same.
So that attitude continued until last January.
Really?
Yep.
So last
January was
2020.
January 2020. I chose 2020 to work
I was
on
like,
my
oh
mental
my
health.
gosh, that's not even like because of the pandemic.
Oh,
It was
God.
it's like something big is coming. I'm gonna make a change.
Yeah, and I've said this to people before, and I know it's very hard. It's hard for me to say, but I think it's important to say. And I know it's like really hard for people to hear. If I hadn't sought help, I'm not sure how long there would have been me to seek help. And I don't mean that necessarily in the physical sense, but I was coming apart at the seams,
Yeah.
And so I finally made an appointment. I'm re-diagnosed. It amazed me, the leaps and bounds it has come, because he's like, okay, well, you have a rather high instance of what we call combined type ADHD.
Yep.
And I was like, what? He was like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But then they also diagnosed me with major depressive disorder, which is very often comorbid with ADHD.
Absolutely.
I left before they could also talk about my anxiety. Let's just be clear on that one.
I was
like,
gonna...
nope.
Yeah, you're like, I can only deal with so many things at once.
So yeah, January 2020, I said, I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to need help. And the thing that kicked it for me was I got a gig. And, I agreed to the gig. It was 3 handle solo cantatas, oratorio, cantata, that kind of thing. 3 handle concert pieces for soprano and Baroque orchestra, which is fine. That's fine. I do this a lot. But then, the contract states they have to be memorized. You will not have a score. That's not how these are normally done.
Okay.
It's valid, but I mean, we're talking about huge swaths of stuff that's usually on score, so you can watch the musicians in the orchestra and they can watch you, and you have like that link through the music. But they wanted to stage some of it, and so they said no book. And it's quite difficult music. It was very challenging, which I usually like. But this was right when it finally was all piled up on me. And I ended up just like sitting on the floor in my kitchen and crying and being like, I can't do this. Like, are you serious? And that's when I said, I need to do something about this. And at the same time, since 18? May 2018 was the first time I played a D&D game on stream.
Oh.
And so at the same time, I was crafting this public persona. And people get that a little wrong with performers. We say public persona because we're the product. The opera geek and that personality is me all the way through. 100%. But it doesn't mean that it's all of me.
Yeah.
And that's difficult for people to understand sometimes. But so I'm crafting this persona, and I'm watching, like, I was watching my Twitter followers go from 800 to 5,000 to 7,000. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then that winter, I met in person finally my friend Hannah Rose, who is a writer. She's worked for Wizards of the Coast and all these other things, and she had read a joke tweet I'd made about, I think it's really wrong that the instruments for bards doesn't list voice as an instrument, because it's kind of a sore spot for opera singers, especially because we'll get the musicians are all here, where are the singers? And we're like, we're also musicians.
Yeah.
So it was a joke tweet, and I was like, yeah, we could have, if you had an opera singer bard, they could have multiple extra languages, whatever else. And so when we met, she said, I think we should write that. Okay. So we wrote the College of the Opera Bard, and we wrote it, and we're like, okay, let's just toss it up on the DMs Guild. Let's list it for like $1.99, see what happens. And by the 10-day mark, we had hit the second, like just below the highest tier of sales. And I had opera companies all over the US, as well as nerd sites, writing, oh, opera singer crafts this subclass. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Wow.
This is just me being weird. Why is this the thing? After 15 years of trying to make a career, why is this the thing that's working? And it was because I was finally letting people see who I actually was.
Yeah.
It was because I was finally not afraid to be like, you know what, fine, I'm weird. I don't care anymore. Yeah. I have already netted the husband. I don't have to work at this.
Yeah.
And so then the I still have a screenshot somewhere. I'm sure, I don't know how much you know about the tabletop gaming scene, but
not as much, although everybody that I love is really into it.
Yeah. So basically, I had met some people, and then I got a message saying, hey, can you come play this evil? This was actually before College of the Opera. This is what started the spike up. Can you come play this NPC on this game? I want you to come be the villain.
Ooh.
I want you to come, and your job is going to be, it's not going to be pre-written how you do it. Your job is to kill this other character who's another guest on the show. I was like, okay, this is fun. And then I find out that the guest that I'm killing is Matthew Mercer from Critical Role.
Oh, wow.
Who is the nicest person. Like, Really, they all are. And that's when people started to see me in the gaming space.
Mm.
And then College of the Opera happened. And suddenly I was getting messages saying, I thought opera was boring, but you're funny.
Hmm.
I'm like, well, opera's pretty funny. Opera is full of more like sex, betrayal, murder than the average telenovela.
Right.
Like all that's there is a language barrier. That's all you're running up against. And so I was like melding these two things together, and I started to get work.
Interesting.
I was starting to get work
wow.
as a gaming person, and I was being hired by opera companies. Like when I did Merry Widow in St. Petersburg in October 2019, which was my last gig before this horrific pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
They marketed the opera with starring the Opera Geek.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm just sitting here looking at all this stuff going, how? Like,
Can I ask, does it feel good? Like, is that like
it feels weird.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it seems like I think if it happened to me, I would feel very seen, and that can be a really good thing and also a really scary thing.
So you just hit the nail on the head.
Mm.
I felt very seen, which for a performer with ADHD,
Mm-hmm.
so definitely you're going to understand this.
Yeah.
We live for that feeling when we step on stage.
Yeah.
And we suck up all that energy. Most performers, I mean, every performer I know is the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think for those of us with ADHD, because our performances are something that we can focus on, that we always pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
We are in our element.
Oh yeah, I always say it makes me feel alive. Like that's the most alive that I ever feel.
It does. The minute you step on stage, when I step on a stage and make believe I'm someone else, it's a feeling like no other feeling. And you asked me in an email, how do I consider ADHD a superpower?
Yeah.
I have lived so many different characters in my head from when I was a kid reading. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know about you, but I've talked to other ADHD kids, and we do it too. We're reading and we start creating the images in our head, mm-hmm. you know? And I get to become someone else. And I think that's where we shine. Mm-hmm. As performers who have a neurodiverse brain that allows us to think differently than other performers. I think we step into, I think we find it easier to step into alternate universes.
Like we allow ourselves to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're so, I mean, how many daydreams have we had?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
This is me. And, you know, I had, again, like I said, I'd had that very emotional wall up, and I had gotten work, even comedy work, like doing opera stuff up to that point. My Queen of the Night with St. Pete was, you know, well, I mean, you're just terrifying as Queen of the Night. So you just get to come out and scare the piss out of everybody. And, and just have fun while in a 26-pound costume. And then if you're me, you go in the back and play your Game Boy for an hour and a half until the next act. But between that, the Magic Flute at St. Pete in February 2018, and then the Merry Widow in 2019 was also at St. Petersburg. And I was the title character there. And the difference I felt as a performer, because I was finally letting myself just be me as a person, it makes you less afraid about being other people, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes you say, oh, you know, I can do that. Of course, I can think that. I can be that way because I can find a way to relate. Because all of our childhoods, we looked for social cues. Mm-hmm. We sat there staring at people.
So good at it, right? Like, oh, I know. And
I'm still really bad at like reading some social cues, but we become good at learning how people expect us to be. And
Yeah.
yes,
Ooh,
and
that I feel like
yeah.
you just punched me right in the gut.
Yeah. So after I did Merry Widow and it went over like it was huge. It was sold out. It was great. That feeling of creating something beautiful with people that you didn't know 6 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
And now they're close friends and you have made something that is beautiful.
Such a like connection, that
It
ultimate
is.
connection of
It is. It's what I've called it before is that and it we are in the business of joy and forgetting.
mm. Oh, I love that.
Our job is to give joy. It is to help people forget for a couple hours or even 15 minutes what's going on in their life, something terrible, what the world's like. And the thing is, sometimes the person you're helping to do that is yourself.
Mm.
And that's where I think a neurodiverse brain like ours can really let loose because our imaginations are boundless.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious what advice you would have for, let's say, an artist with ADHD who is really struggling, especially right now with the pandemic.
Oh man, I mean, it's almost like how can I give advice when I'm right there with
I know,
you?
I feel that too. Yeah.
Streaming has been a wonderful outlet for me.
Yeah.
And D&D, and not just D&D, but tabletop in general, has allowed me to feel like I'm still performing.
Huh.
It's not the same as a live audience, but you're still giving people a story,
Yeah.
you know, that you
Uh,
have to make up on the spot. I've done panels with an organization called takethis.org. I'm one of
oh,
their
yeah.
ambassadors. I'm one of their mental health ambassadors,
That's
which means
great.
that when you're on my stream, in my chat, and I'll make the very important distinction that chat nor I are your therapist,
Mm. Hmm.
but my chat is a safe place for you to come and not be afraid to say, I need help,
Mm.
because I can point you towards resources. I've been given the ability by Take This, the resources to give you. But I've done panels with them about often, talking about this. The advice I give to people who say, well, how do you play a good bard? Do you have to sing? No, you don't have to sing. You don't even have to base your bard around music. You can be a poet. You can be a storyteller. You can be whatever
Mm.
you want. You can be a dancer.
Hmm.
But the thing you can't be is afraid to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
You can't be afraid to say, well, this is probably going to backfire, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Hmm.
So if you're an artist sitting at home and you feel isolated and you feel like someone has reached into your chest and ripped out your heart and you just have a void where that used to be, don't be afraid to be ridiculous. Open your windows,
Hmm.
sing, go online, talk to people, find a community, find a group, find people that you can say, even performers that you say, you know what, why don't we get together and just sing through this on Zoom? You know, I mean, for heck's sake, I went and in August, myself, Josh Blue, the tenor Josh Blue, and the baritone Patrick McNally, we were going to raise money. And so we were like, we're going to record the opera from Final Fantasy VI.
Oh my gosh.
And we did. And the tenor, to no one's surprise, was extremely extra and showed up in a fur coat on Zoom. But we're not good. I love him to pieces. But you look at that, and how many people would think when you hear the term opera singer, like, oh, I'm a professional opera singer.
Mhm.
You're not going to think about three people who love a video game so much that they want to recreate it.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
you're not going to think when you say opera singer, you're not going to think of somebody who says, I want to go and play a game and just talk about it and sing when I want to. And it's a completely different space.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to kind of inhabit a different space.
I love that. And I, the other day, I was like feeling, I hadn't like worked out and I didn't feel like working out, but I needed to move my body. My brain will shut down if I don't do some sort of cardio.
Huh.
Um, So the other day, my therapist was like, "Have you ever just like thrown yourself a dance party?" And I was like, "What? Why would I do that? That's so embarrassing." And she was like, "Well, you should try it sometime." And so I did it. I suggest that everybody try it. All you have to do is one song for 5 minutes in the dark and just dance your heart out, because right now we're just starving for art in any form. That's like when you said like just open the windows and sing. That's just what made me think of that.
I wish I could find, you said that, and oh God, I'm gonna have to go ask Matt. Matthew Mercer he was promoting on Friday nights. There's a streamer who throws dance parties on their Twitch
Yes.
and just invites people to dance along. Yeah, and I can't think of their name all of a sudden. But yeah, I mean, Easter last year, there was a lady at the end of the hall who was so upset she couldn't go to church, and she was very devout. So I opened my windows and started and sang, "I know that my Redeemer liveth," for her on Easter morning. And because if you really look, and we're so good, we're good at doing two things. We're good at seeing a big picture, which is point A to point Z. And then we're really good at hyper-focusing on small things inside the picture. And if you really look at the picture of people's lives during this pandemic, you will find so many opportunities to use your talent to give joy. You will find it somewhere. It's there. And I'm not going to lie. I spent I went 3 months, 4 months almost. I didn't sing a note. This was when my depression really had gotten a hold of me, because I was struggling so much with another one of our great and dear ADHD friends, imposter syndrome. And between that and the depression and the inability to myself to be able to do anything of worth, it was just like, what's the point?
So we talked about kind of what it feels like to perform, but I want to know what it feels like for you to sing.
Like, do you mean physically, or do you mean mentally?
Like what's happening with you when you sing?
I mean, physically, it would be too difficult to like go into right now.
No, sure.
Because there's so many, especially with opera, because we don't use amplification, we don't use microphones.
Right.
So our bodies, like, I use the bones in my face to make pretty noises, is how that works. Which ironically does bring to what does it feel like when I sing? Often that my eyeballs are vibrating. Yeah, especially in high notes. And that's actually how you know you've hit, or for me anyway, that's how I know I've hit the correct resonance spot in my face, because it's an Italian thing. You sing in the mask, you sing in your face to project it. Anyway, that's me, tangent. So I have two modes. I have the performance mode, and then I have learning mode. Learning mode for me can be hyper focusing on one phrase, which isn't a bad thing for opera, because often single phrases are extremely important. Depending on the composer, they could also be extremely heckin' difficult, which is hard because I don't really play piano. I can play my part to learn it, but I can't play piano. But I would go into coachings. I'd pay people to go into coachings, and talking about how expensive it is to try to have a career as an artist, that's a whole nother ball of wax. But
yeah.
And I would go into coachings, and I wouldn't be absorbing anything they taught me, because all I was thinking about is I can't get anything wrong in front of this person, until finally you find the right set of people. And I work with this wonderful woman who is basically a walking lexicon of style, musical style and everything. Brilliant pianist named Linda Hall. And she was working with me on Traviata. La Traviata is about 3.5 hours long, and Violetta's on stage for 3 hours and 10 minutes of it. And so you're memorizing all this music. That's 3 hours of singing. And part of it is very hard. And I was getting so angry because I was messing up the rhythm, couldn't get it right in my head. No matter what I did, And finally, Linda just stopped and looked at me and she says, "You're not going to be able to get this right." And I was like, "What? What do you mean? You've never said that to me before." She's like, "You're not going to be able to get this phrase right because you're never here." I was like, "What?" She says, "You're never here. You're never now. You're always then. What happened, what you just did, what mistake you made, or there, forward, next page, next phrase. You're never here." So when I get into a really good mode of singing, I feel like I'm here. That's what it feels like.
I love that.
I feel like I'm here, like I can work on this, and even if I make a mistake, it's okay. Because we have, Sarah, people like us have so much difficulty forgiving ourselves for mistakes.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Even the little things.
Yeah.
The tiniest of things that no one else will notice. And we can't forgive ourselves for it. So I think that her saying that to me made me go, but I was, thinking ahead, because often what I'll do is if I've memorized something, I'll like visualize the score in my head, and I'll be turning pages in my head and reading the music as I go. But that doesn't work if you want to actually be present in the scene that you're working on.
Right. You have to just be there. Like you say, present. That's something I think of with acting all the time. It's like,
exactly.
If you're thinking about like, oh, did that moment go the way I wanted it to? Then you're not actually there. You're not actually like present in front of the person who's talking to you. And
exactly. And it's like, especially with opera, and most of our disciplines, let's be honest, all of us have a variation of what I'm about to say. For us, we are memorizing music in an entirely different language that will go for 3 or 4 hours. It's that much music. We are also, with that, going to do the staging. On top of that, there's the style, because opera and classical vocal music has a myriad of different styles. You don't sing Verdi like you sing Mozart, so you have to remember that. You have all of that going on in your head, and you have to balance that with getting it so much in your body that it's just you. You have to internalize, as an actor, like think about almost even like Stanislavski had beats. You have your beats.
Yeah.
But I think Uta Hagen was the one that really got into the subtext of it. You have to understand not just what your character's saying, but what your character's thinking, and it has to become second nature to you.
Right. Yeah.
You have to, the way I do it, I don't know about you, the way I do it is I try to find something I have in common, me, with the character.
You find like a way in
Yes.
to kind of find some common ground.
Yeah. And it's hard because a lot of opera heroines are stupid. And that's not me being mean. They're just like, I'm 14 and I saw this guy through my window, so I'm going to die for him now because I love him so much. I'm like, oh my God. Go to a club.
Good.
But I mean, it's funny to think of it that way. I have actually run into only one instance where I couldn't find something in common, because let's face it, we've all been the 14-year-old who is in love for the first time.
Oh yeah.
So we can pull that up, even if we think you are as dense as a brick wall, kid. We were as dense as a brick wall when we were 14.
Oh yeah.
I've only run into one instance, and I could not find a single shred of anything in common with that character. I think it's interesting because as people whose brains are neurodivergent, who have spent our whole lives being what other people expect us to be and trying to learn that, when you can't find anything in common, it's harder.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have it on the same, I don't want to say difficulty, because again, ADHD is such a wide range.
Yeah, spectrum.
And at one point I wondered if we have the same thing with the social cues and everything as our friends and loved ones, or anyone really that is on the autism spectrum, because they too are observing. They too are learning how to react in social situations. I think that while it's definitely not the same, I think it's common ground for us. You know, I think that we will understand maybe their struggle more than a neurotypical person might.
Yeah, you can get a little closer.
You can get a little closer and understand, because once you've accepted that you're not so much broken as just a little wobbly, it becomes easier to very slowly begin to accept who you are.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say my age. You can extrapolate from given data. But I will say that at my age, I still haven't fully accepted myself for who I am. I still fight it. I think a lot of us do. Because as artists, I think as artists, we like to take chaos and make it beautiful. And our brains are chaos. And sometimes we can't make it beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we fight with ourselves. I call the shower my argument simulator.
Oh, of course. I mean, you come up with your best comebacks in the
like,
shower.
Seriously, I'm like, can we just rewind time? That was such a good answer I just had.
My mom bought me and my boyfriend these shower notes, so they're like waterproof, like paper and pencil, and we love it.
Oh my God!
Here's a brilliant idea. I won't lose it anymore. Yeah.
Oh my God, I need that, because I do. I come up with the most important thoughts in the shower. I'm like, I understand this. And I'll come up, like, one of my shticks with the bards and D&D is that I rewrite musical theater and opera stuff with new words. And I'll think of it in the shower, and then I can't remember it when I'm out of the shower.
Oh yeah, then it's gone, and it's just like, well, it'll forever exist in that void of the shower.
Poof, you know?
Oh,
and beyond even just the ADHD linking us with other people who are also neurodiverse, I think it's also the way that we can look at the world differently. We can see patterns and meanings in things as artists who have ADHD that other people might not. You know, you might not see, remind me to tell you something after the podcast. Okay. I say to another ADHD person.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. I'm writing it down.
You're like, I'm writing this on a shower note.
Remember the thing.
So, you know, I think that we try to make sense even from when we're children, to kind of circle back. When we're children, we don't have a word for what our brains are doing to us, and we self-sabotage, because of course we do. We just don't know what we're doing. We don't have a word for that wall of TVs at Best Buy.
Yeah.
We don't know what chaos means. And we don't know that we're different. We just think that everybody else's brain is like this, and they're just better at it. That they're not as awful as we are, because obviously we must be awful. Other people don't think like us.
Yeah.
You know, they might not be able to get from the price of a hot dog in St. Louis and then the crown jewels of England. Yeah. You know, but we can.
So there's a thread there. There is a very clear thread.
I can probably draw you one eventually if I think about it long enough, but
right.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I did want to ask you if there's any ways that we can support you as an artist right now.
I mean,
I know.
All of my stuff.
The pandemic.
Not only that, but we are all awful, imposter syndrome, at promoting ourselves. Because it's so selfish, right? We shouldn't do it. We shouldn't put ourselves out. We're a product. Go forth, sell thyself. Right. I actually have a pinned tweet that has all of my links. Awesome. I have merchandise that has the College of the Opera logo on it. Awesome. But yeah, I have that. I of course have my Twitch channel. I do stream. I normally stream a lot more video games than I am right now, but currently, thanks to scheduling all mashing up against each other, I am in 1, 2, 3, 4 live tabletop streams a week right now.
Oh.
And I also then try to stream video games 2 days on top of that. So it's a little erratic at the moment.
No, it sounds fun. It also sounds like a lot.
It's a job, and that's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
Gaming has become a job,
Yeah.
and it's funny that is. I do have a Patreon. Unlike other Patreon people, I don't have a physical product really. It's I've tried to think of physical products to sell, and the people that are in my Patreon say that they're there just because they want to support the artist. I mean, that's how that worked for hundreds of years. Still going to try to think of a physical product though. That's really it. You can go to Twitter, you can find out, but the way you could support me is the same way I can support you, which is just being like, I see you. I understand you. My joke on streams is I was an opera singer till I took a pandemic to the gigs, which is a really bad Skyrim joke. But yeah, it's bad. But I mean, we're all in the same boat right now.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat. Our brains might be trying to sabotage us that we're not really artists. We are. Just try to create something small every day, even if it's like a stick figure. Because that's all I can draw.
Or have a dance party, or open your windows and sing. We've got all these options now.
Open your windows and sing.
Yeah.
Teach yourself something new with your art. Like I've had to learn how to record audio and remaster it so it sounds okay in my bedroom. I'm an opera singer with hardwood floors and 12.5-foot high ceilings. It's echoey in here.
Oh boy.
Learn. Find a way to make yourself remember why you're an artist. That's how you can support other artists. Because when you remember what makes you an artist, you can look at someone else and say, I see that in you. And you can go out and tell somebody, not even publicly. You can just, send a text to somebody, send a message and just say, what you do brings joy. That's how you can support each other as an artist. I mean, money doesn't hurt.
You could throw that in there, but yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, again, I hate to be this person, but there's another Discworld quote where it's like, in my experience, what every artist truly wants, is to get paid. It's to show up and perform, and have someone say, "Hey, that's really awesome. Here's some money. Come back tomorrow and do it again." Hey.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we want.
And we need it. We need it right now. So
we need it so much.
Well, that feels like a very good, positive ending point. Kelli, this has been so wonderful. It's been so nice connecting with you and talking about our high school and and just talking art for however long we've been here. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. It's like I said, it took me a long time to get to the point where it was okay to talk about your mental health, and then okay to realize that your mental health has actually helped you as an artist.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to see more people are embracing the chaos that is us.
Me too. All right. Well, we'll talk soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. And that's it for today for the ADHD Artist Podcast. This podcast was produced by me, Sarah Guise. Original music composed by Christopher Aaron Nahr. You can find more of his work at www.christopheraaronnahr.com. Nahr is spelled Knarr. Podcast artwork by Joseph Ramsky. For any inquiries, you can contact him directly at jramski3@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at the ADHD Artist Pod.